If you don't mind, could I just start with a quick video clip, just to set the mood, and see this work as well. This is Margaret yesterday. Let's see. This is Roz, by the way.
At least 500 people.
500 boys and girls, men and women.
500 Irish people.
500 brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, husbands, wives, friends, relations.
500 of us.
500 people in Ireland took their own lives last year.
1,000 brothers, sisters, sons.
Daughters, husbands, wives, friends, relations in 2 years.
2,000 of us in 4 years.
Over 3,000 people in Ireland took their own lives in the last 6 years.
You probably know someone.
Someone who isn't with us anymore.
What can we do to help stop
this waste of human life?
This has to stop.
What we can do is start.
Start helping to save lives.
Start building awareness.
Awareness of depression, self-harm and suicide.
Awareness of the supports that are available.
Awareness of people around us at risk.
Awareness of people who need help.
We need to start helping people who need help.
We want people to know.
To know that it's really okay.
To know that it's really okay not to feel okay.
And that it's more than okay to ask for help.
We need to help.
We need to help.
We need to help people who need help.
Help save their lives.
Help save their precious lives.
And the best way to help
Is to do it together.
Can we all just try and help?
Can we all just please try and help?
Help break the cycle.
Help break the cycle.
help break the cycle of suicide.
Can we all just help break the cycle of suicide?
We have to break the cycle of suicide.
Shoulder to shoulder, we can break the cycle.
We will start this now.
We have our whole lives ahead of us.
I'll come back to that afterwards. But I was talking to some girls outside earlier. They're here? Yes. Will you pick a year, please, between 1999 and today?
2003.
And you were going to 2003. That's not the email as well, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the quick version of the quick story. I was born in Limerick, moved down to Galway, went to the Bish, graduated from NUIG. I was the worst engineer ever. Like the worst. I put stairs, external stairwells where they weren't supposed to be. It was a disaster. But I was a good project manager. I was good at getting shit done. So I got promoted quickly ahead of my ineptitude. And I ended up in 1996 being the managing director of a manufacturing company. And being 26 and a real bollocks, I wasn't a bad MD, but I wasn't the most enlightened HR guy. And then at the end of a couple of years of doing that and doing it pretty well, the Germans said, look, we'll give you a subsidiary to run. There's 75 of us Germans doing it, so if you have around 85 or 90 Irish, you'll still be the head of the game. So we, with 35 Kerry men and Kerry women, produced more than the Germans with their 75, did it at better quality, much better customer satisfaction. And one day I walked in at 10 o'clock in the morning. I normally would start the day around 7 o'clock in the morning. I walked in at 10 o'clock and everything was humming. And I'm an extrovert, which makes it easier to do these kinds of things than an introvert, but it also gets you in trouble at times. So I picked up the phone, I rang my boss, Dr. Barberg, and I handed in my resignation. And felt great about it, it was no big deal, and took the rest of that summer off to look after the kids. And about a month and a half later, I got a knock on the door, again around maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And there's one of my neighbours, a guy called Dan the Falcha. His name is Dan Murphy, but we call him Dan the Falcha because he owned the Falcha bar in Abbeyfield. And there's a couple of questions in life that there's no real good answer to. One of them was like, when did you start beating your dog? The question he asked me that day, there was just no good answer to it. And it was, when are you going to get over being shafted and get on with your life? And there would have been no point in trying to explain to him that I handed in my notice and that I resigned of my own free will. Instead, I invited him in and I got talking with him. And I shared some of my ideas. And I was thinking about these ideas for a couple of months. And at the end of it, he left all excited. And that evening, another guy called Gerard O'Brien called up to me. And he said, Dan DeFalch reckons you need an accountant, but I can't do it. He said, I'm too busy. And I said, I don't need an accountant. And he said, Dan said you'd be slippy. And he came in. I didn't even invite him in. And he ended up leaving that evening, being Pulse Learning's first employee. And that was 1999. 2007, we were ranked by Deloitte as the fastest growing IT company on the island of Ireland. And we've had a great rock and roll time since then. For 2003, I just asked maybe to pick a year at random, rather than tell the whole story from sort of A to Z. 2003 was a year where we were doing really well. And I gathered together the executive board, and I said, I'd really like us to shift our focus and to move to selling into North America from selling into Europe. And I gave a really powerful, really compelling argument. I was very cogent and I was very, I think, convincing. And to a man and woman, they all said no. Good reasons, but they all said, war in Iraq, George Bush, dollar yen, dollar euro, recession. Plus, it'll take you forever to get a really marquee name in the States. You'll spend a long time trying to sell into kind of mom and pop type organisations, but you won't sell into a marquee name. So I took all of that advice and I got on the plane. And I felt like Bono. Not that I felt short and greasy, I felt like Bono, that I could take over America. And I'd forgotten that there's two international airports in New York. There's Newark and JFK. There's also LaGuardia, but there's two international airports you could fly into. So I thought when Claire organised the accommodation, I'd be somewhere near Queens or Manhattan, but I ended up out in Newark, out in New Jersey. And if you've ever been in a real cheap hotel, and I know there's hotel people here in the audience, so I won't make too big a deal about it, but if you've got dark sheets on the beds, it's a really bad sign, right? So this was a hotel where the beds had brown sheets, brown covers, and you can see the place hadn't been cleaned like in forever. And it's funny at times like that, you think back to being back in the Bish and being back at UCG, in my case, and being back playing hurling with Rahun, and you say, what the fuck am I doing here? This is too hard. And as I look around the room, there's two books. There's a telephone book and a Bible. And I guess it's at that stage you find your faith. So I picked up the telephone book and I started cold calling. And by the end of 2003, it's funny because Karina was mentioned, or somebody's mentioned earlier on, we had a career guidance counsellor in the Bish, and he said, you can all be astronauts. And I loved him, I thought he was brilliant. His name was Paddy Scanlon. And our first client in the US was NASA. And our second client was Citibank. And our third client was Pfizer. And to get NASA required picking up the phone book and ringing up NASA and asking to speak with the head of learning and getting through to an office where the lady answered the phone and her name was Maureen. And I said, hi Maureen, my name is Jim. Do you know that Maureen is the Irish for Little Mary? And she said, my mother was Mary. And I said, well, let me tell you, what's your maiden name? She gave me her maiden name. I said, you know what? That's a real Galway name. And she said, is it? I said, oh yeah, I'm from Galway myself. I said, your ancestors were probably part of the tribes of Galway. And Maureen said, that's fantastic. How can I help you? I said, I'd really like to get a meeting with the head of learning for NASA. And And she said, sorry, the line has just gone a bit funny. I thought you said you were in a meeting with the head of learning from NASA. I said, yeah, I'd love a meeting. She said, okay, can you be here tomorrow? I said, of course I can, not a problem. What time? And she said, we'll make it in the morning. I'll get him to go to coffee with you. I said, perfect. I said, Maureen, just one little question. And she said, yeah. I said, where are you located? And she told me where she was located. And I picked up another phone afterwards and I booked a flight and I flew out to NASA. And I couldn't get inside their reception, but Maureen knew this, and she knew that he had his coffee outside the main reception area in the coffee deck out in the, it was NASA Ames. I think it was in Fort Lauderdale. And NASA became our client. And that happened in 2003. So that's the 2003 story. But I guess why it's important to tell that is not because it's a great story and while it didn't turn out to be as successful as Bono, we didn't do bad. It's really about if you're serious about making a difference, you really gotta focus on getting shit done. And shit is some highly important things. It's not many highly important things. And it's not some highly important things and some less important things. It's 1, 2, or 3 highly important things. How many people here have an idea, have potentially a business idea, or social idea, or something that they've had in the back of their mind for a while that they'd like to get done? How many people? Good few of you. Okay, good. I'd say there's a few more as well. Apart from that, a lot of people. I think there's probably a few more as well. How many of you are making that happen? Good. Well, so less people. Okay, well, well done. Now, what's your name? Laura Taylor. So, Laura, do you want the good news or the bad news? The good news. The good news is you're doing the two things that are important. You've got an idea, which is like your first creation. You know, you got the plan. You might even have written it down a bit. You might have thought it through. You might have discussed it with people. That's great. And the other part of the good news is you're trying to make it happen. So that's great. Anybody know what the bad news is? What's the chance of Laura being successful? Not great. We don't even know her idea, but not great. Why is that? Anybody might care? You can guess. There's people all over the country yelling out the answers on the internet. Anybody care to give a guess?
She's still thinking about it.
Well, no, she's actually doing some stuff. That's good. The reason that Laura, sorry, the reason that you're likely to fail is that most new ideas fail. If that's the case, how can we use that to our advantage? Well, if most new ideas fail, that means not all of them fail, right? So the key is, fail fast. Try again. And I guarantee you, was a Babe Ruth, he had one of the best baseball records ever, guaranteed. And interestingly, and it's a fact, he also had one of the worst strikeout records. How does that make sense? One of the best records of home runs, he swung the most. He gave it the most shot. He took on the ones that most other people wouldn't take on, and some of them he connected with. But he wasn't afraid to fail. Now, he wouldn't necessarily be the role model for the other parts of his life. But there's examples of that all the way over. Let's take the corollary. Let's talk about slow failure. Anybody here a fan of Google? Not a bad company. They've done okay, haven't they? Anybody here remember Google Wave? Anybody here from IT?
No, but there's a man who builds everything for Google around the world.
Okay.
Here. That's all right.
Did you ever Google Wave?
Yeah.
You did. What happened to Google Wave?
That's the
No. So Google Wave was a massive failure. What about Google Health? One of the biggest companies in the world, Google, they actually launched a healthcare business. Now, healthcare is a gazillion-dollar business, right? There's many people have made a success within healthcare. Google launched a healthcare business and it failed. But it failed slowly. McDonald's launched the Mac Spaghetti. Can you imagine eating spaghetti out of McDonald's? I can't imagine eating anything out of McDonald's, but can you imagine eating spaghetti? Or Colgate launched frozen meats. Can you imagine going into a store and buying a frozen meat product with Colgate written on it? Big, really successful company. They created, disposable biros, all sorts of disposable razors. They also invented, and they spent a lot of money marketing it, they created a range of disposable underwear. Would anybody here buy disposable underwear? The thing about it is this, even with that last question, when you're asking people about your idea, if anybody else here is asking people about their idea, whatever somebody says, it's just an opinion, right? And opinions are like arseholes, everybody's got one. And they're not terribly important. What's really important is data. So again, what you try and do is you try and fake door it. You try and swing for it, whether you're going to hit it or not. You try and give it a shot. But you try and do it with, Laura, the minimum amount of time and resources invested. Anybody here ever heard the minimal viable product? So if you've got an idea, if you want to try and get something done, sometimes you got to go with the minimum viable product. That means the smallest product that you think you can sell, because you can always build off it. Who does that really well? What major IT company do that really well? Intel, Microsoft, a number of them. They actually launch things, and they launch them. Are they perfect when they launch them? No. But they're prepared to get real data back, because what they found is that when you launch something and you ask for people's opinions, all that happens is it creeps and it creeps and it creeps. Now I know this, right? I know this about failing fast, but we'll still make the mistake of trying to go about doing things where ultimately what happens is we fail slowly. So Laura, whatever your idea is, the fact that you're working on it is fantastic, because that'll give you the real data back. But if it doesn't work out exactly as planned, that means you've got failure, but it doesn't mean the whole thing has failed. It just means you're looking for that failure point fast. And the quicker you can get to a failure point, the quicker you can pivot it, the quicker you can be agile and move it around. So that makes relative sense, does it? Anybody disagree with that? Anybody agree with it? Okay.
Nicola Gordon actually this morning was interesting because she was saying that all the businesses that she was involved in before 11/8/90 were on the downward curve when she took them on. And that now her newest idea, her latest idea is one that is on the up curve.
Yeah.
So the transition there is kind of interesting.
Absolutely. So we're agreed that in principle that it works. Okay? Let's go back to making shit happen. So there's two parts of making shit happen. The one part is you got to have an idea, right? Because, for example, if you try and build a house and you don't have an idea of where the house is going to be built, or how many bedrooms it's going to be, or whether it's going to be a bungalow or a two-story building, and you ask somebody to build your house, it's unlikely it's going to be built right. Agreed? So you have to have an idea. But you also have to make it happen. So which do you think of those two creations is more important? Which do you reckon more important, the idea or making it happen? Which do you reckon? Which is more important, the idea or making it happen? The idea. Anybody else agree that it's the idea?
Would you like to make it happen?
Yeah. Which do you think there's a shortage of, ideas or people to make them happen? Shortage of people to make them happen. Anybody agree or disagree? Agree? Shortage of people to make them happen. So would anybody here agree with me that if you had to choose between a great idea and the ability to execute in a great way, you'd always choose the person and the business that's great at execution. Do you get what I'm at? There are a load of business. I'll give you an example. eBay. eBay was set up by a French guy, and he'd previously gone to a friend of mine called Bruce Dunleavy. Bruce Dunleavy was the senior partner of Benchmark One, which is still today the most successful VC fund ever. Okay? And one of Benchmark One's initial investments was in this French guy with a great idea, and after a couple of months he went AWOL. Nobody could find him. And he was this kind of genius guy who was hard to track down, but he went AWOL. And 6 months later, he called Bruce again. He said, Bruce, I'm really sorry about you investing that money in my business. The $1 million didn't really work out. Sorry, but thank you for being involved. Anyway, I've got this new idea, and I'd like to share it with you. And Bruce said, no. Right? He says, are you kidding me? No. So Guy, I think his name was, Guy came back a couple of months later and he said, look, I've got a prototype working on this idea, and I think you should have a look at it. It's going to be really, really special. It's about like buying and selling stuff offline, but it's going to be really, really amazing. And Bruce said, I don't think so. And 6 months later, Guy asked again. And Bruce agreed to have a 5-minute meeting with him. He said, I'll just see the demo, that's all. And Guy brought it in, and the demo broke, didn't work. And he was feeling really bad, and Bruce kind of had a moment of weakness. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll come around to your offices tomorrow. You can show it to me again in the offices, and I want to see where you're based anyway. So he brings him into this big loft area, and at the end of the loft area, Guy is there, and he presents the prototype, and it works, and it's pretty cool. But this guy has gone off with $1 million of his money. He's disappeared, and I'm not sure if he wants to invest in them again. Just as he's about to leave, the postman arrives. And the postman shouts, it's 2 today. And you can see Guy trying to get rid of Bruce as quickly as possible, because he's really embarrassed about what's going to happen next. But Bruce sits back and he relaxes and waits to see what's going to happen. And the postman brings up 2 sacks of mail. And Bruce says, so Guy, what's the story with the 2 sacks of mail? He said, look, he said, it's a minor glitch, but our payment system doesn't work. Right? So we've told our customers that we can't tell whether they're paying us or not, but we've asked them, would they pay us anyway? He said, right. And they're paying us. He said, so you've got customers who are paying you, even though they know that you don't know whether they're paying you or not. He said, yeah. And he invested in that business that day. Not exactly sure what he invested. If I wasn't on video, I'd give you a figure and I'd say it with confidence. But I think it was something like, 5 million. And he made something like a 333 multiple return on that investment. So the point again was, you want to find people who can execute, people who can make shit happen, I think, rather than the idea. Because eBay was the 5th business of its type. Google was the 5th search engine. Intel was the 5th of its company. It wasn't necessarily the first one. It was the one that could execute best. With me? Okay. So like all good rules, sometimes you got to break them. So I was on Secret Millionaire last year. I was asked to do it about this time last year. And I don't watch TV. And when I heard the title Secret Millionaire, it sounded like California. And I said, I don't think so. It's not like the quality stuff they'd have in TG Car. And I said, nah, not going to do it. So I'm living in Kerry, and one way to work out whether Dublin people are serious about their proposition or not is you say, look, I'll meet you in Kerry, and we can talk about it there. And in fairness to them, they came down the following day. By then I'd seen a couple of the episodes from previous year. There was actually a guy, John Culcallum from Galway, who was on the year before. I thought it was really, really good. So as I said at the start, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a clubmate. I'm 42 years old, I'm an entrepreneur. And I also battle with depression. I have done all my life. And I wasn't able to say that out loud until about 12 months ago. And now it's hard for me to say it, but I say it anyway. And I thought, if I could get on this program Now, if I could somehow target mental health, no, I'm going to meet them. And I'm going to say to them that, yeah, I'll do the program, but I want it to be about mental health. I want to choose the projects I get involved in, and whatever I do, I'm going to insist that they help me make a sustainable difference. And I'm going to make a deal with them when I meet them tomorrow that if I do it, they've got to promise to back me up. So I met them the following day. They were the first people I told that I was battling with depression. Kind of a weird conversation to have. But I'm Irish and I'm male, it's the last people you tell is your father and your mother. When I told my dad, he was so sweet about it, he was so nice about it. You kind of overcompensate a little bit, So depression, what is that now, James? Is that like a sadness, or, where is that? Is that like the seasonal thing they talk about on the television? Is that what the Americans have? And he was trying his best to be, understanding. It was very, very kind of him, very sweet of him, very supportive of him. So I met them, and we made that deal. And on September 10th of last year, the program went live. And I was expecting that there would be a degree of, you big fucking idiot, you and your depression. What have you got to be depressed about? Let's be honest. And I was expecting a certain degree of healthy cynicism. And I was surprised by two things. Of the thousands of letters and mails and messages and calls I got, every single one of them was full of love. And every single one of them was full of empathy. And the second thing that surprised me was everybody asked, how can we help? But there was nothing to help with. So I had planned at that stage to go on a cycle holiday for a few days. And I get on the bike and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cycle from Kerry to Donegal, and I'm going to somehow promote mental health on the cycle. So I get cycling myself, and I'm thinking about this more. And about 20 kilometres down the road, I pull in, and I ring Anne O'Leary in Vodafone. I said, Anne, again, the good angel and the bad angel and the extrovert saying things that you haven't fully thought through. I said, Anne, I'm organising a cycle around Ireland. We're going to have 1,000 people taking part in it. It's going to take 2 weeks, and we're going to visit schools up and down the country as we do it. And what I need from you is a 1-800 number that we can dial, so that wherever you are in the country, you'll get patched back for free to the local support area, the local support group, the local support group for depression, self-harm, suicidal ideation or bereavement services. One number for anybody in the country. You dial that number and you're brought back to the local support group. And Anne says, I'll call you back. A guy called Martin Carroll called me back 10 kilometres later, and he introduced himself. He said, yeah, we'll do that. I said, great, perfect. He said, will you send me on your web address and some of the information around? I said, yeah, no problem. Listen, I'm just on the bike at the moment. I'll be back in Ireland in a week's time. I'll send it on to you as soon as I get back, about maybe a couple of weeks. We're doing a couple of tweaks to the website. He said, yeah, that's no problem. So I got back and I started recruiting people. So our plan was to have 1,000 registrations. As Polly says, as of Monday we've got 2,500. So it's 2,500 day registrations. Each of them doing 100 kilometres on average. It's 250,000 kilometres we'll cycle. And I was rang up on Monday by Colm Hayes show. They were just about to interview somebody for the Cycle Against Suicide. And they said, Jim, can you give us the soundbite? I said, sure. Just give me a second. Did a quick Google, worked out that the moon is something like 356,000 to 408,000 kilometres from the Earth. I said, we're going to cycle from here to the moon. We're going to get between the 22nd of April and the 5th of May, we're going to cycle the same distance from here to the moon. And the whole key of this is, we're doing a cycle. We're also going to break the cycle. In Germany, over the last number of years, they've taken international best practice and they've put 5 levels of action in place. Not ideas, but action. And these 5 levels of action have reduced the incidence of suicide in Germany by 32% over a 3-year period. 550 lives are lost in Ireland. If we could do something similar in Ireland, how powerful would that be? We could reduce the number of lives lost by more than the number of lives lost on the roads. And the number of lives lost on the road are too much as well. So Joe was talking about that idea earlier that you should fail fast. Small idea. Put it into place carefully. Minimum amount of time and investment. Minimum amount of time and resources invested. And don't be worried if you get it wrong. Sometimes you got to break that rule. Sometimes you got to think big. And sometimes you got to be prepared to fail big. So far we're succeeding. That video there that we saw at the start around getting those people together and getting the 2,500 registrations that we got together is part of us thinking big. Getting shit done, some highly important things, is part of defining what's the important things. For me, that's the important thing. It's where I want to focus most of my attention. It's where I think my talents can be most best utilised. For you, it's going to be something else. But I would leave you with, if you're going to fail fast, minimum amount of time and resources invested, or maybe not. Maybe go for the big one. Thank you very much.